In the automotive world, it's hard to deny that Japan has created some of the best engines to ever exist. And it doesn't matter if you hate them or you're a sworn JDM weeb, you can't deny that engines such as Toyota's JZ series, Nissan's RB series, or even Mazda's 13B hold a special place in the history of cars. And I'm not only talking about performance. The Japanese are very well known for making engines that can go hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles without having any major problems. So in that case, what does it look like when the Japanese get it wrong? Starting our list of awfulness is the Subaru EE20, known more simply as the Subaru Boxer Diesel. Now, what makes this engine so awful? Before that, let's get to the specs. First presented in 2008, the Boxer Diesel was a 2-litre 4-cylinder Boxer engine, obviously, with a IHI turbo and fuel injection on a common rail by Denso. It made 150 horsepower, give or take, and was used in many models across Subaru's range, including the Impreza, Legacy, Outback, and Forester. Now, since this is a video about engines, why don't we give it a listen? Now personally, I think it sounds great. It's a diesel, but you can still hear that Boxer burble. And that concludes all the positives for this engine. So then, what about this engine is going to make you a regular visitor to your local Subaru garage? Well, first off, the usual diesel problems: fuel injectors, clogging DPFs, clogging EGRs, glow plugs which can seize into the heads, and worst of all, crankshaft failure. How the f*** did Subaru come up with this? Now, to their credit, it is said that engines made after 2012 are much better, and crankshaft failures then are very rare, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that this shouldn't happen. But I digress. Time for the second entry. Oh, the Mitsubishi Starion. This is a car that I am very fond of. What I am not so fond of is one of the engines that was available with this car. As you've already guessed, that is the 4G54B, a 2.6 litre 4-cylinder with one overhead camshaft and a small turbocharger. In its original form, the 4G54 was used in cars like the first generation Mitsubishi Pajero, with two Mikuni carburetors doing the fueling. When this engine was brought over to be used in the Starion, apart from adding a turbo, they also made this engine the first from Japan to have electronically controlled fuel injection. And while that sounds very innovative for the time, they didn't do it quite how you'd think. What you see in front of you is a normal diagram showing electronic fuel injection on a Toyota Aygo. As you can see, there is a rail which contains 3 injectors, one for each cylinder, which then sprays fuel behind the intake valves, which then goes into the cylinders. Now, because multi-point injection in the early 80s was still very rare, Mitsubishi approached this slightly differently. And as you can see on this diagram, what they did was they placed 2 fuel injectors behind the throttle body, acting as the electronically controlled injection. This fuel delivery has been described as sketchy at best, meaning that for tuning, this really was not a good setup if you wanted to go down that route. And either way, having 2 fuel injectors behind the throttle body also means that your fuel delivery has the chance to be very inconsistent. As for the issues this engine faces, the first one is head gasket failure when tuning. This is because this engine was from an old design which really wasn't made to be tuned very hard. It is also known that after reaching 100,000 miles, these engines have a tendency to blow their oil pumps. If you can live with its weird fuel delivery and without tuning it all that much, and you're prepared to shell out for an oil pump every 100,000 miles or so, this engine is not all that bad. This one is an engine I have personal experience with. At one point, I worked in an unspecified Mazda dealership within the UK, and more often than not, when a Mazda came in with a serious problem, it was equipped with one of these. This was the Mazda SH-VPTS or VPTR diesel engine. What makes it unique in comparison to a typical diesel engine is the fact that it runs at a much lower compression ratio of around 14:1. The main benefit of a lower compression diesel is lower emissions of nitrous oxides. As for its implementations, it was common to find this engine in the Mazda 3, 6 and the CX-5. Now before we dive in and I rip this engine to shreds, I do have to admit that when it works, it is a very good power unit. It's very smooth, it's very good on fuel, the pickup is fantastic, and in general, I like the engine when it works. Sadly, as I'm sure you've realised, since this engine is making an appearance in this video, most of the time it doesn't. Like with the Subaru, first the usual suspects for diesels: fuel injectors, DPFs, EGRs. Oh, and these problems are just the start. To name the rest of the issues we have: turbochargers, timing chains, carbon buildup, vacuum pumps, blocked sump pickup pipes, which then leads to an increased level of oil. Oh, and as a heads up on the last problem, if that isn't addressed quickly enough, it will lead to engine failure because of low oil pressure. So in conclusion, the Mazda Skyactiv-D, just avoid it and buy a petrol. That's right, on this list, even Toyota isn't innocent. First launched in 2005, the Toyota 2AD was supposed to be Toyota's premier diesel engine, used in cars such as the Auris, Corolla Verso, Avensis, and even made its way into the Lexus IS220D. In its day, it was one of the most refined, modern, and fuel-efficient diesels on the market. As you can tell though, time has not been very kind to this engine. So let's go over a few of the reasons why you may want to think twice before buying. As with the other two, let's get the most obvious diesel stuff out the way first. Injectors, DPFs and EGRs. As an interesting design quirk, these engines actually featured a fifth fuel injector in the side of the cylinder head, which was there to help out dose out the extra diesel for the DPF regeneration, but in the end it actually caused more problems. On top of that, if this engine wasn't regularly maintained, the timing chains had a tendency to stretch, and if that wasn't enough, there's also a chance that this engine will blow its head gasket, or possibly even crack the entire cylinder head. I'm honestly not sure how Toyota managed to do this, because the previous series of diesels, the CD series, were much more reliable. However, there is one positive I can take away from all this, and that is, when the engines were new, Toyota did actually admit fault and replaced many engines under warranty. Well done, Toyota. Ah, finally, an entry from Nissan. Are you really surprised? This is the company that gave us the Duke, for God's sake. Anyway, this is the HRA2DDT, a 1.2 litre 4-cylinder turbo developed by Nissan with help from Renault. Under Nissan, this engine was used in the Pulsar, Qashqai, and of course the Duke. While it's a pretty standard run-of-the-mill engine for its class, and at the time it was designed, it didn't take long for this engine's main flaw to be exposed. And just what was this flaw? Oil consumption. That's right, if there was one thing this engine was really good at, it was an absolute champion of burning oil, and the sheer amount of oil it could burn is honestly nothing short of amazing. In my time researching, I found multiple accounts of owners in the UK with cars that were less than a year old, which were already showing signs of oil consumption. When questioned, the dealers just said that it was normal for the car to be using this amount of oil, which, by the way, it wasn't. To give you a figure, I found a report from an owner who just had their Nissan Qashqai serviced, which, by the way, at this point was only a year old, and in 900 miles of driving, the engine had consumed 1.5 litres of oil. Nissan eventually gave in and brought out a software update that was meant to fix this, but it never fully worked, and as a result, many engines were replaced under warranty. I swear the Nissan engineers must have all been sick when it came to designing the piston rings. As for its other problems, there was also the potential for carbon buildup due to the fact it had direct injection, as well as the pistons themselves failing, which would also necessitate an engine replacement. And the final problem these engines suffer with before I wrap this one up are the ignition coils, which fail prematurely and need to be replaced more often. God, what an awful engine.